How's it going, everyone? Mafara here. Welcome to Heliopolis Radio. Today, we've been fortunate enough to be joined by Jeff Hardy. Jeff is the founder of a nonprofit organization, Care for Peace, which he'll be here to share a lot about. And he also has over 30 years of experience in establishing healthcare systems, not only in the States, but in other countries outside. So without further ado, Jeff, I hand it over to you. Tell us about yourself. What was your upbringing like? And yeah, you can start there.
Well, first of all, Mafara, thank you very much for inviting me to join you here this morning. I am very interested in you and what you're doing and what your country is doing. And having been in Nigeria to look at the potential designing of a women and children's hospital in Port Harcourt, um, I really got to know the spirit of Africa. And I think that and also I worked with some people in Kenya,
Oh, yeah.
and really enjoyed the spirit that I felt there too. I think that's a spirit of the people that transforms the borders. And when I think of the word holism or holistic, I think that holism is concerned with complete systems more than the sum of its parts, even more than any individual group of synergistic parts or systems. And so that's really where I'm coming from. And so when I feel that spirit in Africa, wherever I am, it just reminds me of why the idea of care for peace is already inside of everybody I've ever met, and most people I have known. So if you look at what it is that we've done, it all comes back to the idea of care for peace that I discovered in myself when I was a hospital corpsman trainee in the United States Coast Guard Reserve, and I was serving patients who were coming from the Mekong Delta during the Vietnam War. And I had that wonderful feeling while I was caring of peace. And I suddenly realized, wait a minute, peace is a feeling. It's not the place between two wars, because the place between two wars is not peace. That's where you have the reign of terror after the French Revolution. That's when you have the problem in America, with the Reconstruction period right after the Civil War. I mean, peace is a feeling. And I saw it in every nurse I ever met and many medical doctors that I've ever met, and very much mothers, lots of mothers all over the world that I've met, and I've held their babies. It's just wonderful. And when they hand me their baby, I can't tell you the most wonderful feeling that I get where they're giving up their trust and their love and their care to me, even if it's only for a few seconds, only for it's a few minutes, so that I can sit there and hold the baby and look at it and coo with it and everything, then give the baby back. That connection, that's what care for peace is all about. So here's the story. I was in Nigeria talking with the governor of River State, who at the time was His Excellency Rotimi Amici, a wonderful man, and his wife was there too. And so was the Minister of Health, because we were doing a bunch of discussions about maybe building a maternal and health child hospital in Port Harcourt. And I was explaining to him this drive that I was having just to get to the governor's
Must
place,
have been quite
and
difficult.
big mess, big mess. and
Yeah, must
oh,
have
I
been
mean,
quite
I've
a
got
lot to take
stories.
in.
Oh, it's just amazing. And I talked to him and I said, maybe we shouldn't be building another hospital in the middle of the city. Maybe we should be building mini health centers all over the periphery and
Hmm.
even out, beyond the periphery, so that these little mini health centers won't be so hard to reach. Well, then this brilliant man said, well, we got a whole bunch of fighting going on and tribal
Mm,
animosity
mm,
and ethnic problems. So maybe this will help. And I flashed. I just said, wow, interesting. If we could do what they're doing in some of the hospitals in Israel,
mhm,
which is Arabs, Israelis, Jews, Palestinians, doctors, and staff, they're all working together in the hospital. They're working together. And so, and it didn't matter at that time, this is in 2009. At that time, the animosity level was nowhere near what it is now.
mhm,
But I just looked at him, and that's when I said, wow, we just might be able to care for peace. We might be able to show what it means to care for peace for not just a nation of people, but a people that could teach that by doing, by
mhm,
showing people what care for peace is all about. Well, I honestly don't know what happened to our ideas because I got grabbed to work in many other countries, including, several years later, being invited to Myanmar to build a rural clinic
mhm.
in the most deep rural clinic in the world. And that was absolutely the most wonderful experience of my life because we, a group of very wonderful doctor, nurse friends of mine, started a nonprofit organization here in California, and we it became an international nonprofit foundation, and we decided to build a clinic in the most furthest place we could possibly find, which was in Myanmar. And we
Wow.
called our organization the name, which is today Care for Peace.
Wow.
And we built the clinic. It was planned to be a telemedical clinic center for other clinics all over Myanmar. We even had agreements with the government and with our partner organizations over there. And then the military coup came and blew it
Wow.
up.
Wow.
So, all of a sudden I'm truncated. It's like what they say that people who lose a leg or an arm, they wake up in the morning and they can still feel the arm, but it isn't
Yeah.
even there. So what I did was I said, okay, I got to do something. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a book. And that book is going to be all about to care for peace. And it's going to be a global mandate to secure the second human evolution in perpetuity. The process is the solution. Now, what does it mean to you to hear the words second human evolution?
It's interesting because I was actually reading up on it. I think judging from what I read in the bio that you mentioned, my thoughts on it were really taking what we have accumulated as a species, knowledge-wise, skills-wise, and taking the highest of those and most valuable of those achievements, and then adding those and discarding that which doesn't work, anything that's rudimentary, anything that's superficial that's detrimental to a population. Sorry, apologies. My dog is just gonna mouth off there, but I hope he's not interfering with the sound too much.
I can't even hear him. I
Oh,
can't even
okay,
hear him.
perfect.
But are you recording this?
Yes,
You're
100%
recording
recorded.
this, right?
Yes, 100%.
Because I'm going to take that exact statement that you just said, and that I'm going to write that down. You just own something that I'm going to borrow, and I'm going to
No,
give you all the credit for it. Because
no.
seriously, that is so succinct. That's beautiful. Would you expand on that?
Because like you mentioned, our society, and this is just opinion. Obviously, there's facts and there's science behind it, which I'm not verified to say anything about. But there's a lot that we've achieved that's very beneficial in terms of our technology, in terms of the systems that we have in place to keep things running. But then there are also some detrimental aspects, maybe the elements of greed, corruption. I know this is
Oh,
very
yeah.
superficial to say. I mean, there's much more to it, but they're just, minor things and tweaks that can be removed to make what's existing much better. Not saying that it's perfect what we have, but I do think in comparison to generations that came before us, Like for instance, my grandparents or my great grandparents, not just getting into like racial stigma and anything like that, but facility wise, everyone has access to information because of the internet. We are now less biased in our opinions because we're exposed to so many different ideas, cultures. It's just much
Yes.
easier. So,
Right.
to summarize essentially, the second evolution for me is really taking the grace of the foundation that we have, which we're so fortunate to have, and really taking in the challenges of the future tomorrow and building upon that, I guess, if that makes sense. I know it's yeah.
Wow.
I don't know if that makes
Wow.
sense. Yeah.
Uh, This has become my podcast, and you're my guest.
No, no, not at all. You definitely not
This
at
is
all.
this is awesome. Well, let me throw something else at you. I'm gonna explain what the first human evolution is and why it ended in the mid 60s, and then I'm going to ask you the same question. And
Hmm.
I, to embellish on that. So the first human evolution ended in the mid 60s sometime. Maybe it's sometime between the 50s and the 60s. I mean, I don't know. It's just sometime there. I can't put my finger on it, but I will say that when the mutually assured destruction was the name for the fact that nations could blow each other up and the whole world up,
Hmm.
that to me is a good enough finger on the place that I can use. Now, there were other things that occurred in that. In America, it was when we discovered China. Gosh, that big country over there that's sending all us those cheap toys, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wow, that's actually a country, and that was thanks to Nixon, you know. And so, but then we also had the peace movement, which in a
yeah.
lot of ways can be credited to not just the Vietnam War, but to the French movement that started with the existentialism movement. And I think that we owe a lot to France to have given us the question of who the heck are we? Come on, let's let's take a time out. You know,
Mhm.
what's
Yeah.
the definition of hell? Sartre says hell is other people. Okay, wow, is that really? And so we started asking these existential questions around the 50s and 60s. Okay, so what I ask you is how do you define the first evolution that started way back 2.5 million years ago and ended sometime in the mid 60s? And what happened to you? What happened in your world?
So now looking at it, because like you mentioned, I think 60s now, the Cold War tensions were really coming to maybe their peak, I guess, between 60s and 70s. And I think the idea of mutually assured destruction, like you said, it was the ending of our most rudimentary aspects of living as a civilization, like the whole command and conquer type mindset. I think in that generation that was established there, that was when it kind of ended because I think people realize
Mm,
how basically meaningless it is to human progress to engage in activities which were maybe more important prior in ages prior, where you had to defend your borders, you had to whatever, you
right.
had all those threats. And then I think what emerged, I think is it the baby boomer generation? I don't know the terminology, I'm not sure specific, but what
That's
emerged
good.
there, I think I know it sounds like probably not, but I think like the idea of peace as an initiative for humanity as a whole was established, whether it was because of psychedelics or it was because
I
of,
like that.
yeah,
Yes.
whatever. Yes, it could have been, whether it was psychedelics, whether it was music, because music played a major role in, I feel, shifting the hearts and minds of humanity
Yeah.
back then. I mean, you had Bob Marley, John Lennon, even Jimi Hendrix to a certain extent. You had so many
Yeah.
individual
Yeah.
people who really took away the power from corporate structures and government structures and really showed that, humanity's evolution or its direction, it's a combination of the society and the culture, not just the politics, not just war, but the art, creativity, literature, those things are fundamental to the next level of evolution, not just weapons, not just, so I don't know if that answers your question because it was a quite a tricky one, but I hope it answered to a certain extent.
No, that wasn't an answer to my question. That was adding to it. That was telling what your perception is, and you're bringing that to the discussion,
Mhm.
because that's what the process is all about. That the process is a solution. That says it right on the front cover of the book. Okay, so what is that process? Well, the process is to back up far enough and look at the first human evolution and the current suspended human evolution, which where we're flopping around and we don't know what the heck is going on, and it looks like there's all sorts of slippage back into
Mhm.
the first human evolution,
Mhm.
but that's definitely not working. So what what do we do now that we're flopping around? Well, we're doing what you and I are doing. We're talking, we're backing up, and we're saying, well, this is what I see. This is what I see. And what you've done is you've shared what you see, which is different than anything I wrote in the book, anything that I've said before, anything I said even today with you. And that's what we have to spread all over the world. We have to spread the process because we're in what's called a pre-planning mode. And the pre-planning mode is what you do before you plan. Now,
Mhm.
I was a planner. That's what I did for 50 years.
Mhm.
And planning healthcare systems never worked unless we had a very strong failure avoidance method of pre-planning. Well, should we really build a hospital? Just like that talk that I was having with the governor of Rivers State. Should we
Mhm.
build a hospital? Maybe we should build little health clinics all over the country. So it's like when people get together and they don't come in with just an opinion that they're saying, this is what I believe. This is it. And that's the way it is. If you either believe me or you don't, then that's it. And we've got a political system, and they say America is polarized. No, America isn't polarized. Our thinking is polarized. Our ability to look at what's happening, what has happened, and what needs to happen in order to survive enough to get into the second human evolution, because we aren't even going to start that
Mhm.
until we pre-plan our way to the planning process. And so here we are in the suspended human evolution. And what I'm interested in hearing from you
Mhm.
is, what is the suspended human evolution where we're flopping around? What are some of your thoughts about that flopping around that we're doing and just not getting to that pre-planning stage?
I should give you the keys to the interview because you're asking all the good questions. um,
You're giving all the good answers.
No, it's like you mentioned, suspended human evolution. It's basically the inertia that I guess we're experiencing now. And it's a mental thing more than anything. It's like there's no better way you put it. We're polarized in our mind and our thinking process, and we're not capable of harmonizing differences. And that's either because we're either very dogmatic in our beliefs because of our upbringing or because of the political situation within our countries. I know in America it's democratic, so opinions are largely accepted. In Africa, we're still building into democracy coming out of colonialism, and there's a lot of rough edges. And then you get other countries where it's still dictatorial. There's oppression. There's a whole different variety of things that are really disturbing people from getting a thorough time to thoroughly evaluate their mental process, if that makes sense. There are too
Yes,
many
it does.
external pressures from, like I said, political, economy wise, and obviously, we have inflation. So there's always pressure that prevents people from having that inner dialogue with themselves to evaluate what they believe, what they don't believe. And also the amount of external pressure, whether it be war, whether it be, financial, it just doesn't allow people to get together in a good enough atmosphere where it's conducive to have, healthy debate. I think I don't even blame people if they come with fixed opinions because the world that we're living in, it kind of warrants you to have fixed opinions to function. If you don't have a certain belief about something,
Ooh.
how do you navigate X, Y, Z? I don't know. And I'm sure in your industry, I mean, if you're told to build or asked to build a hospital, there's certain fundamentals that people just expect because that's just the way it is. I feel maybe that's just across the entire board. They just the expectations based on circumstances, which prevent, change and innovation. And maybe that's where the stagnation and the suspension has come from, is we just haven't had that opportunity because of all the external pressure and the lack of time to internally evaluate our state of being, to see how we want to proceed as a species and as individuals. So I guess that's my idea of suspended evolution, is just, yeah, lack of time to really evaluate what we believe in and what we're willing to change within ourselves and externally.
Excellent. I liked your word inertia. You said that that was one of the first things that you said about we don't really have that, but what provides inertia in human dialogue? Well, we have to use the same terminology. We have to use the same words. And one of the things that I focus on when I think about the process as a solution, we're not talking about the system is the solution. Now, I don't know if you ever heard the AT&T commercial that said the system is the solution. And what I say is no, the system is way down there. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that can exist if the process getting there includes everybody who is involved,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't talk about giving everybody a telephone if they don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So the system is not the solution. The process is the solution. Now let's talk about the process. What is the process? It's the words that go into the dialogue. It's the words that go into sentences and paragraphs. And that's why over a period of about 5 years, I've been working on the what is it that we can share and start using as tools for the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's where the idea of the first human evolution, the suspended human evolution, and the second human evolution came from for me. Now, what happened to me was I was in a traffic jam that in New Delhi, trying to
Mm-hmm.
get to the Taj Mahal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a taxi that was nice and air conditioned, and I was looking out the window at all these trucks and cars and these buses that were painted and had all sorts of stuff glued on them. And on the top of the buses, there were 100 people,
Mm-hmm.
and the mopeds that were trying to get around each other, and it was stuck. The whole damn thing wasn't even stuck, wasn't even moving. And the thing that really got me about this is that nobody was honking a horn. It was quiet. People accepted
Yeah,
the
people
situation
accepted the
that,
situation
you
for
know,
what it is.
and so, and there I was looking at this, and I was thinking, oh my God, is this where human evolution has gotten us? And that's when I had the idea of this is the end of the first human evolution. And I didn't expand that idea until I got back to the hotel and I wrote it down. And I says, well, wait a minute, maybe there is a point that the first human evolution actually ended, and it was long before that traffic jam. And then when I was in Myanmar, the people in Myanmar, when I said the first human evolution, when did it end? Oh no. Their idea of when it ended is in 1988, which is when the saffron revolution occurred because the government had increased the cost of cooking oil so much that they couldn't cook. I mean, it was too expensive. So the whole country followed the monks, and the monks wear these saffron robes, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why it was called the Saffron Revolution. And they proceeded to say to me that that's when the end of the first human revolution was. And sure, that's when Aung San Suu Kyi came to being. Her father ended up being a hero
Mm-hmm.
during all sorts of war and conflict. But so designing the second human evolution requires us to back up and use the terminology of the first and the second and the suspended human evolution. We need to be asking each other the questions that you and I are asking and answering together. That's it. Then we can talk about care for peace and what that means, because that's already there. That's
Mm-hmm.
something that people already have in their spirit. I believe that that's just in the human spirit. And I rarely say believe, because I think that we got to get to I know better than say
Mm-hmm.
I believe. when
Yes.
we're having discussions of the reality, which is what you were kind of touching on there in
Mm.
your last comment about, well, I don't know whether we'll be able to do this with the attitude that people have today, which is the opinion-based
Mm.
attitude. This is what I believe in, this is it, and I don't have time to talk. So we've got
Right.
to interject things that are already there. But I think that when you start talking about first and second human evolution and the suspended human evolution, you're going to find out that everybody, bam, they get right into it. It's not hard for them to grasp. And that's why I'm looking at my success in my life right now was not just writing a book, but to use that book as just frankly a calling card to be able to outreach the concept of the first and the second and the suspended human evolution so that we can start using the same words.
Mhm.
What do you think?
No, I really strongly agree with you that when you give people an opportunity to define something without setting parameters, like you gave me a chance. I mean, my perspective or definition on the first, second, and suspended human evolution could be completely misaligned or wrong for that matter. But the fact that you gave me the option really created something more valuable, which is the opportunity to connect with someone else without the need or expectation of anything. I think fundamentally that alone is what eliminates a lot of the barriers that we have in our society when there's no longer a gain or benefit or an expectation to your interaction with someone, but there's a mutual human connection, knowing that you both exist and that you both have perspectives and opinions, which have to be evaluated through each other,
Yeah,
not just yourself.
yeah,
So,
yes,
um,
yes,
um,
yes.
I strongly agree with you on the opinions, especially coming from, in Africa. Fortunately, now we're very traditional, and I'm sure you also got to experience it in Nigeria. There's a traditional structure that's somewhat unyielding and uncompromising sometimes that it's difficult for things to progress forward. But I think having these, with the advent of technology and, like there are thousands of podcasts out there, you have exposure now. You have exposure to people engaging in dialogue, and that's like you said, that's that cascading effect of how you teach people how to engage in conversations. I actually had one question for you because you're in the United States and I've been there. Fortunately, I've been fortunate enough to visit. I visited a friend in Houston. I also I went to California 10, 12 years back. And what just blew my mind was with all the freedom that has been afforded, the fragmentation is just like, wow. It's so what type of process do you believe would be able to aid the US? I know elections are coming by for you this year, April.
And
What type of process based on the Care for Peace initiative would you prescribe to a country that's going into obviously a very tense time? You have people who are Democrat and Republican,
right.
whatever that means. Um, what would you recommend? What process do you believe will get the country more harmonized rather than, fragmented?
Oh, that's a powerful question. Let me ask you first, what do you mean by fragmentation? You said fragmentation, fragmented. What do you mean by that? What is fragmented in your eyes?
Right.
What's your observation?
Fragmented means that things that were inherently whole, they were together because something has created a split. Those things which were together are no longer, they're now separate. So, I'd like think of it as left and right. Now it's either you're either left or you're either right, but you can't be both type thing. So that type of fragmentation is splitting between opinions that are inherently supposed to be, I guess, one opinion, there has to be a harmony between the two, not a distinction.
Yeah, okay. I, it's a pregnant question. Uh, I have a major problem with using too many words that mean too many different people, different things
Mm.
to different people. If you're
Yeah.
talking to people and you use the word liberal, well,
Mm.
liberal, my gosh, that used to be a wonderful wonderful word because it meant that we were open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
Now it means, oh, those are the people in the far left. Those are the progressives. Those are the woke people. There's all sorts of words that are being used to trigger the thoughts that people have in their heads that are so opinion based that I can't get past that. That's just there. And I don't think that we can do a whole lot of that. But what we can do is start working with the process. And that's what you and I are talking about. That's what's the process? Well, what is care for peace? Oh, well, what does care for peace? I know what care means. And when I talk to people in the whole healthcare industry, because I work a lot with
Mm-hmm.
people all over the world in healthcare, I say, hey, what's the difference between care and clinical delivery?
Mm-hmm.
And here's these healthcare people who they can't give me an answer. Seriously, they can't give me an answer. Because if I get a nurse, nurses will say, oh, care, man, that's what I do all day long. You get a doctor, and the doctor says, oh, clinical delivery, that's what I do all day long. And nobody better take that away from me. There's laws that keep nurses from doing things that I'm supposed to do. And
Mm-hmm.
by the way, that's not just every doctor and not every nurse. I'm generalizing for the discussion here.
No, I hear you.
So, because I know lots of doctors who are the most caring people in the world and are men and women and people of every walk of life and sexual orientation. But the key is there's a difference. So, if there's a difference, then what's our hospital providing for our
Mm-hmm.
patients? Well, our hospital is providing something more than just clinical delivery. And so that's a discussion that I have in hospitals when I'm talking about building a new hospital. And when I was talking about building a new hospital, I said, look, these corridor-based hotel style patient care units are ridiculous. Nurses get tired walking down to the end of the corridor, and you got these patients who are really sick, and you're going to put them in a room at the far end of the corridor. What's the deal? So what I did was I took an ICU unit in America at Glendale, California, and looked at their intensive care unit and noticed that it was a wraparound one box. It wasn't a long rectangle. It wasn't a long corridor. It was just a box. And there was a dining room table in the middle of it so that nurses could sit on either side, doctors could sit on either side, even people who came to visit, the families would sit on either side and they talk with each other, but right behind each other were glass windows into every patient's room. And guess
Mm-hmm.
what? No nurse complains about their feet at the end of the day. All I had to do was listen to the nurse. What does care mean to you? And what does care mean to the patient? They in those long corridor base, they'll put a bathroom between the corridor and the patient's bed because it's quiet for the patient. Well, guess what? Patients think care is being immediately attended to. They want to make sure that someone is there if there's a problem. And sometimes the nurse sitting on this side of the table can look past the nurse they're talking at and say, oh, hey, your patient is woken up and it looks like he's taking out his trach tube. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nurses just, they got it. So these are the kinds of conversations that I had where we all backed up. The
Mm-hmm.
doctors would back up, the nurses would back up, and most importantly, the owners of the hospitals would back up and the architects would back up. So I think and that was my model for, okay, how do we proceed? Because we had the same planning tools that you're talking about where people are opinionated and they've got all this stuff in their heads and they've got fragmentation and and when I think about the fragmentation, I realize that it's not just one word, it's the words that describe that word, the word that describes that
Mm-hmm.
word, you know, and by the time we labeled somebody a lefty, then that's it, because lefty is woke and it's someone who probably thinks that we should be complete socialist in the country. But you got to get people together to say But, back up and back up. What are
Mm-hmm.
the forms of government that are working right now? What are the forms of working that are, government that are not working right now? What are the things that we could do? What worked in the past? What worked now? What doesn't work now or didn't work in the past? I mean, all these discussions have to be thrown out there, but it has to be a real discussion where everybody in the discussion backs up and does not say, well, I believe in abortion. Do you believe in abortion? And I say, well, what's the discussion here? Well, killing babies. And
Mm-hmm.
I say, okay, I want to back up to where we are all talking about something that we all agree on, because we'll probably not agree at that abortion level.
Mm-hmm.
So let's all back up to where something we can be. Okay, there's too many people in the world. Oh, I don't want to talk about population control. And I say, well, okay. When I was in Myanmar, I said to the people in a meeting, by the way, a lot of stuff that I come up with, I test with my small audience before saying it to the big one now,
Mm-hmm.
you
No,
know, and
I
I say, yeah, so I said, what's the problem? What's the problem? People don't like the word control, population control. Well, yeah, they're telling me what to do. It's communist, it's socialist. And I said, okay, well, how about population continuity? Why don't we think about what it would mean to you to be part of this process of
mm-hmm.
allowing humanity to continue and not overflow? Well,
Mm-hmm.
then we came up with, how about everybody can replicate themselves? Wow, great. My wife and I have two children. After we had two children, I got fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can that these are the discussions that we can have when we're talking about population. Well, what would you do with the all those migrants that are getting on boats in North Africa trying to get north? What about what's going happening in Africa, where a lot of people are also going down to your country, to
Yeah.
South
That-
Africa? I mean, you guys have a border problem too,
Yeah,
but
no.
it's not a border problem. It's a problem where we have not put our finger on the most difficult discussion issue that is facing us today. And it's beyond the weather control thing, it's population. Because if we don't deal with that, then go ahead and drop the bombs, because that's what
Mm-hmm.
humans have done all these years. They've killed for peace. So let's just, do that, and to heck with this discussion. And I'll tell you how bad it is. The
Mm-hmm.
United Nations has something called the Millennium Sustainability Goals. And
Mm-hmm.
if you enter that, MS MSG or GMS, I don't know, one of them. And there's a chart that they've got, and there's 7 boxes and all, excuse me, 17 boxes, and all of those boxes are the items that are part of the sustainability goal.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one problem. Not one of those boxes says population management or
Mm-hmm.
population continuity. They'd probably make it population control if anybody, by that point I'm glad they hadn't put a box in there, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to get them to put that box in there that says population continuity, because everybody understands that. And it's something that you can get down to the what can I do level. Because when I'm talking to people on just about every podcast, they ask me, wow, that's really good. What can I do? And of course, guess what I say? Keep talking.
Mm-hmm.
Keep
No.
talking.
I hear you. We live in a society where obviously I mean, maybe my generation more so than yours, because I do believe your generation, just because of the trauma that you had to witness, I mean, the wars, the political tensions, I think you just had a much tougher upbringing, so you're more resilient to difficult conversations. I feel my generation in particular, everything is still quite imaginative. We grew up with and I think it's a good thing to
Oh,
some extent. It's like you grow up with a soft heart, you care for everything on the planet. People won't say it, a lot of people won't say it, but so when you hear the word overpopulation, you think, oh, one life has to, people haven't soberly digested what that means. And I think that's maybe just a difference. It's a sensitivity thing. It's a thing that, like you said, I think discussion. removes that barrier of sensitivity and allows people to maybe process things differently. So, I mean, the first thing that you think of overpopulation is you think, you go out there and you start using whatever nerve agents to just, that scene. Like you've seen it when they cull chickens and when there's a disease and they do that. Like it's kind of, it creates a horrendous image in someone's mind. But then when you think about, okay, maybe not having as many children, maybe if it's necessary to even have children because of circumstances, like I think people maybe process things when it's more about self-regulation and self-discipline than having to go out and, physically just cut the population in half and stuff like that. I don't know if that touches onto it, but that's definitely not my field. But I do, especially with that aspect, it's a very serious and really, really major problem that we're facing. I've always believed nature has an inherent balance ultimately, and somehow, some way, the planet knows what it can handle and what it can't handle. I know this is maybe more on the spiritual aspect of it,
So,
but you've seen events that have happened, and I'm not trying to be, dogmatic or post-apocalyptic. I'm the furthest thing from that, but nature just inherently does it. Things happen, famines happen, droughts happen. Unfortunately, the sad truth is things die, and in that process of dying, things are born as well. I think, yeah, nature has made provisions for the future. And I think, in terms of the Care to Peace initiative, why I really resonate is I believe that embedded in us is nature's program for the future. It may not be, I mean, I tried not to be biased and to be like, oh, it's me, or I'm part of this, or I'm part of that. I think we all have we're born and then we expire, and that's ultimately it. But within that life cycle, we have there are those of us that will be a part of that journey, and there are those that will help that transition, and there'll be those that establish a knowledge base for those to pull from. I think that's just how the circle of life goes, and I think even what you're doing now, the experience, the wisdom that you've accumulated, that is that in action. It's that in motion. You're actually transmitting that knowledge. Obviously, you're using the podcast so that it can reach another person. It doesn't help to reach one person. It helps to get it to the next, and they'll be like, Jeff brought up this topic. Let me build upon it. Let me actually take that courage and initiative, and then, nature plants seeds.
nature plants seeds, but you are doing the seed work today. You're the Johnny Appleseed of podcasts here, because that's what has to happen. And it's funny, when I first got into this podcast guest process,
Mm.
by the way, I'm not interested in starting my own podcast.
Don't.
I started
Super
businesses.
stressful.
I'm just not, I want to do exactly what I'm doing right now with you. And when I first started doing it, it was like, okay, this might be interesting. And I did a couple, and then I'm saying, wait a minute, this is a global phenomena.
Mm,
This is something this is the tool to share the tools that
mm,
are needed to discuss the next step. And so when I look at
mm.
what you're doing, and man, you are really eloquent in your,
Yeah,
and
thank you.
I mean, you're very eloquent. And so the beauty of that is that, my gosh, you're speaking English. That is the language of change in the world right now. I know there are some other languages out there that are,
No, no.
fighting for it, but you're in charge, and it makes me feel really good to be part of this process. So that's what you're doing is just as important, if not more important, than the process that I'm talking about, that we have to start getting people to sit in a circle and look at the issue that's in the center of the circle, and
Hmm.
not come in with opinions that,
Hmm.
oh, I believe in this. Man, I get in those discussions because they're already going when I walk in, and so I look at them back and forth, and I don't say anything. And then usually one or the other will say, Jeff, what do you think? And what I'll say is, I think both of you have opinions that are going to be fought over forever and ever. Amen. That's what I think. So, well, what's the alternative? Nah, that's the key. What's the alternative? The minute they say that,
Uh,
then then we're there.
I don't think you
So,
could have worded it any better. That is very, it's very funny but true. But no, I agree with you 100%. I agree with you. Sorry to cut you off. I just thought what you said was we've all been in those situations before, so you can't help but laugh.
yeah, yeah. So I think that we're at a point, Mufaro, that we should
Yes,
close the
no,
discussion. I'm sure we could keep talking forever.
no.
But what, what do you want to leave your audience with right now? What do you want to leave them with?
So there are two things. First one's actually a question to you, and then I'll probably answer the second afterwards. But I know you wrote your book. And I would
Okay.
like to see where can people access the book? Is it available on Amazon? Is it on Google
Yeah.
Reads? That's okay. So
It's
then,
on Amazon, and I don't have it anywhere else. I basically got it so that I could give it away. So I've bought lots and lots of them, and they're sitting right by my desk. I give them to everybody I see, but I can't give them to people in America, in Africa, or some
no
other place.
problem, no problem.
So, but I price them so that it's not that much money. So,
All right, no, thank you.
yeah,
I
yeah,
will
we
put the
gotta.
link.
We
I'll put the
Okay.
link in the description in the bio so that people can access it. And yeah, to what would I want to leave the audience with? Honestly, I guess maybe just explaining the whole essence behind this podcast. I'll be upfront with you. I know you asked the questions today. I hate talking. I know, but as a podcaster, you should never say this. I hate talking, and I love to hear what
Ah,
people
that's
have to
not
say.
true.
No, I really do. I just because I feel like the most I've learned in my life, honestly, has been through my interaction with others. Hearing what people have to
Ah,
say has allowed me to really evaluate my own thinking process. I think I'll be honest
ah,
with you, growing up, I was a very opinionated person. I don't have to hide that. I did have my preconceived assumptions about a lot of things. But over time, I guess I've been fortunate enough to meet different people, and this podcast specifically has allowed me to meet a whole host of different people. And I think when you realize the
I
vast
bet.
scope of everything and just how little you do know, it just makes you want to be quiet and listen more. So I think if I would leave the audience with
Yeah.
anything, don't do what I did and talk too much. Just perhaps just listen more, and perhaps you might just be closer to your next breakthrough in life, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that's too much, but yeah, that's what I'll say.
Wow. Very nice. By the way, now I know why you are so eloquent. It's because you're a good listener. And so
Thank you.
when you do talk, you speak the truth.
No, I truly appreciate the kind words. I think we all have our, I don't know. I'm not, not being spiritual or anything, but I believe that, God has embedded an element of truth within all of us, and that truth emanates through the experiences we go through in life. There are things that you've gone through that simply because of the nature of reality, I'll never be able to go through, never be
Yeah.
able to understand. And I'm fortunate enough that you're willing to impart that with me. You're willing to share it and with those that listen.
Yeah.
So I think, I really, having you on the podcast, a lot of people, we hear the word peace and they throw it around, but it really resonated. I think the world we're living in now, it's incredibly difficult. There's no easy way to put it, and I don't see it getting any easier. I think that's the reality of evolution. Nature will always give challenges, and ultimately, it's a question of how you survive those challenges. And what you're talking about is it's not individual anymore. It is about peace, and peace is community, and it's togetherness. Not It's not an individual game anymore. So I don't know. I do really wish you all the best as you get onto more shows. I hope you continue doing it. I hope the hosts will be more disciplined with time and getting everything together. But you don't have to go through. No, but I'm really thankful that you're willing to share. And I think if anyone has an element of wisdom and intelligence, which most humanity has been gifted with, as you said, they'll listen in and they'll tune in and they'll really take it seriously, because I think we're at a point in time where things are just so tough that if you don't look for alternatives, you'll suffer inevitably. And suffering is just something you wouldn't wish upon anyone. So I do believe, yeah, I wish you all the best as you continue to push your message forward. I'll share with my audience, and I hope that people will take something from it. I really do. That's my wish.
Thank you very much, Mufaro.
No, thank you so much, Chef. I don't know if you have any closing remarks. I know you are the podcast host for today, but if you have any closing remarks for the audience, any wishes, any words of wisdom, yes, please do share.
Oh, no, to your audience, I would just say listen to Mufaro, because Mufaro has all the tools, even before I came on this morning. And that's proof that this is not going to be difficult. So, to your audience, I say have fun with the terms and the tools and the words, because they're already inside of you. Care for peace.
Thank you so much, Chef. Truly appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All right.